Hello, welcome to today's edition of the Daf Yomi. Today's Daf is Bekhorot Daf 24, Omid B. So let's dive straight in. And this is the meaning of that which Rabbi Baba Hana said, that Rabbi Yochanan said. As the lemma was raised by Achi, the distinguished, Beribi. What does that mean? Beribi is an abridged form of the word Ben Rabbi, son of Rabbi. In the period of the Tanaim, it was an honorific reserved for a great sage, regardless of his actual ancestry. Occasionally, one deserving of his title was simply called Beribi, without any mention of his actual name. If one saw an animal with the appearance of a pig that was training after an ewe, what is the halacha? The Gemara asks, what is the dilemma he is raising? If we say that he's inquiring with regard to the firstborn state of the future offspring, and he is therefore essentially asking if the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, or if the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis, then let the dilemma be raised with respect to a more common case of a lamb, rather than the irregular case of a pig-like animal. The Gemara answers, actually, when Achi the distinguished raises the dilemma with respect to the ramifications of each opinion, he inquired with regard to the future offspring's firstborn status, and this aspect of the dilemma was raised under the assumption that the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis. So what's the footnote? The question of whether or not the pig-like animal is permitted for consumption applies also according to the opinion of the rabbis. By contrast, according to the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, this question of whether one can eat it is the only relevant issue, as he maintains that an animal which has not given birth will not nurse another mother's animal's offspring. He also inquired with regard to whether or not the pig-like animal is permitted for consumption, and this aspect of the dilemma was raised under the assumption that the halacha is according to the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. The Gemara elaborates, he inquired with regard to the offspring's firstborn status, and this question applies even according to the opinion of the rabbis, who say that an animal must be merciful toward other young animals. The Gemara explains the dilemma. One can say that when an animal is merciful, this applies only toward the animal that is of its own species, but to a young animal that is not of its own species, a mother animal certainly does not show mercy. Therefore, the fact that it nursed proves that it is its offspring. Or perhaps an animal might also be merciful toward an offspring that is not of its own species. If it is merciful only to its own species, the ewe is exempt from having its future offspring counted as firstborn. If its mercy extends to the other species, then it is not exempt. And Achai, the distinguished, also inquired with regard to whether the pig-like animal is permitted for consumption, and this question applies even according to the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. If you say that he holds that an animal that has given birth might be merciful and nurse another mother's offspring, perhaps this is so with regard to an animal that is of its own species, but to an animal that is not of its own species is not merciful, which means a pig-like animal is kosher. Or perhaps a mother might also be merciful towards an offspring that is not of its own species, in which case the pig-like animal might not be kosher and therefore may not be eaten. After explaining the dilemma of Achi the distinguished, the Gemara concludes the dilemma shall stand unresolved. Next Mishnah. Rabbi Yossi ben Hamushulam, who's that? Was a Tana and a contemporary of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi from the final generation of the Tanaim. He and his companion Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh were part of a group called the Holy Assembly, whose members devoted 1/3 of the day to Torah study, 1/3 to prayer, and 1/3 to mundane labor. Some identify this assembly with a group called the Holy Community in Jerusalem, which is composed of Jews who persevered and continued to inhabit Jerusalem in the generation after the destruction of the Second Temple. A small number of Rabbi Yossi ben Hamushulam's halachic and agadic contributions are mentioned in the Mishnah and the Tosefta. And since it is prohibited by Torah to share a firstborn, as it states, and you shall not share the firstborn of your flock, Deuteronomy 15:19, one who is slaughtering a firstborn and must clear hair or wool from the area of the neck in order to facilitate proper slaughter, clear space by rooting the hair with a cleaver, a bekhorot. There's a picture here of a cleaver, a bekhorot, from the Greek kopis, meaning a large knife with a wide blade, used for cutting and chopping. It's a picture of a Roman era cleaver. One who slaughters the firstborn or another consecrated animal may clear a space from each side with a cleaver, provided he does not move the plucked hair from its place. The halacha in the context of the opinion of Rabbi Yossi HaMishulam, Sefer Vayda Hilchah Me'ila 111, Shulchan Aruch Yodei 383, from here and from there, on either side of the neck. Although he thereby plucks out the hair, he may clear space in this manner, provided that he does not move the plucked hair from its place. It must remain intermingled with the rest of the hair, so it will appear that he did not shear the animal. Likewise, one who plucks the hair not to enable one of the sages to examine the place of a blemish, and thereby determine whether it's permitted to slaughter the firstborn outside the temple. So what's a footnote? Tolesh es haseya liros makom mum. It is permitted to pluck the hair of a consecrated animal in order to enable a sage to examine the area of a blemish, provided he does not move the plucked hair from its place. This halacha is according to the ruling of Rabbi Yossi ben Hamushulam. And that's from the Rambam Sefer Vayda Hilchah Me'ila 110, Shulchan Aruch Yodei 383. Rav says, the halacha is according to the opinion of Rabbi Yossi ben Hamushulam. The sage raised their name before Rav Huna. What is a halacha in the parallel case of one who wishes to slaughter a non-sacred animal on a festival? The resolution depends on the reason for the ruling of Rabbi Yossi ben Hamushulam. There are two primary interpretations of this discussion which in turn affect the halachic conclusions that arise from it. According to the first interpretation, if it is assumed that plucking is not considered a form of shearing, then Rabbi Yossi ben Hamushulam rules it is permitted to pluck the hair from a firstborn even intentionally on a weekday. By contrast, intentional plucking on a festival is prohibited, since it involves uprooting an item from its place of growth. And according to the second explanation, even if plucking is not considered a form of shearing, it is prohibited to pluck the hair of the firstborn intentionally. Rather, the Gemara's question is as follows. Is the ruling that it's permitted to pluck the hair from a firstborn unintentionally due to the fact that there is no prohibition by Torah against plucking this hair? If so, then on a festival when it is prohibited to uproot an item from its original growth, the act would be prohibited even when performed unintentionally. Or perhaps there is a prohibition against plucking the hair of a firstborn by Torah law, and the reason it is permitted to clear space with a cleaver in the case of a firstborn is because the plucking is an unintentional act. This would mean that Rabbi Yossi ben Hamushulam's lenient ruling with regard to clearing a space with a cleaver applies to a festival as well as a weekday. That's from Rabbi Shimshon Sands. Does he permit clearing hair with a cleaver? Because he holds that plucking is not the same as shearing, as opposed to plucking the hair of a firstborn. It is prohibited to pluck the hair on a festival, as this is considered uprooting an item from its place of growth. Or perhaps, in general, Rabbi Yossi ben Hamushulam holds that plucking is considered a form of shearing, and this is the reason that it's permitted to clear a space with a cleaver in the case of a firstborn, as this is an unintentional act. The Havalei the Vashein Mikavein. Rashi explains that one intends only to clear away the hair but not to pluck it. Accordingly, the Mishnah is teaching that one may clear away the hair despite the fact that this will likely result in its removal. Others maintain that shearing a firstborn rather than plucking out his hair is the unintentional act referred to here. Accordingly, the Mishnah is teaching that it is even permitted to pluck the hair intentionally since one does not intend to shear it. And that's from the Rabbeinu Gershom Mohagola. An action performed for a permitted purpose, from which a prohibited labor may inadvertently ensue, since he does not intend to pluck out the hair, and on a festival an unintentional act is permitted. Rav Huna said to them, "Go and hear Rav's disciple Rav Hananel." And if Rav in fact said that the halacha is according to the opinion of Rabbi Yossi ben Hamushulam, I will explain to you the resolution to your dilemma. They went and they asked Rav Hananel, and he said to them that this is what Rav says. It is the halacha is according to the opinion of Rabbi Yossi ben Hamushulam. They came before Rav Huna and said to them, in a parallel case of one who wishes to slaughter a non-sacred animal on a festival, it is permitted. The Rambam rules that one may pluck out the wool of an animal he wishes to slaughter on a festival, provided he does not move the hair from its place. According to the opinion of Rav Huna, the Shulchan Aruch deems it prohibited and rules that one may only push the hairs out of the way on each side, but not as that this should be done by hand. This is according to the opinion of the Rosh and Tosfot that the hair of a firstborn may be plucked only unintentionally. And that's the Rambam Sefer Zemanim, Hilchot Yom Tov 3:3, Shulchan Aruch Chaim 498:12, and the Magen Avraham there. To pluck it in order to facilitate proper slaughter. It was also stated by Hananiah ben Shalamiah says in the name of Rab, in the parallel case of one who wishes to slaughter a non-taken animal on a festival, is permitted to pluck the head in order to facilitate proper slaughter. That's the end of the Omen. Thank you for listening. All the best. Bye.